Okay. All right. So this last Gunk piece I just did, I started talking about, what led me to Claremont colleges, and talking about being an individual versus part of society, and different things here and there. Talked about Defending Your Life, the movie, and trying to explain to some of the people that might not understand what happens to people that graduate a little later in life, because it happens quite often. As a matter of fact, the school I went to, Pitzer, has this thing called a new resource program, which I don't like the language of it, because I read the Communist Manifesto. Did a paper on Adam Smith. Did a essay when I was in high school on wealth of nations and capitalism. I read anything from left to right, up, down, if I can. Try to make my own judgments. But as far as the Communist Manifesto, which is only 15 pages, one of the problems that Engels and Marx had, Marx is usually given credit more so than Engels for the manifesto, is that the capitalist, the pure capitalist, and it was released in the mid-19th century. The Wealth of Nations was released in Scotland the same year as the Declaration of Independence was written, 1776. But the early capitalists saw a lot of resources across America. Wood in the form of lumber, steel, coal, a lot of resources out there. And what the manifesto asserts is that they started seeing people, communities, as resources. And purely resources, going so far as to say that business owners, robber barons, whatever you want to call them, gave no thought whatsoever, or no consideration to people's emotions. And you still see it happen today, where sometimes plants are shut down, and the owners know months beforehand it's going to happen. But what are they going to do? Tell the employees? They're going to give them as little notice as possible, so they squeeze out as much production as possible. So that's what the manifesto had a problem with, was resources, and people being used as resources. And working in a warehouse in Ontario, which was eventually bought out by Staples. Staples Center in LA, office products. Anyhow. But this place has, like many places have, a human resources department, and it's just funny that they still refer to it as that. In the school Pitzer, which has a labor edge in some areas, organizational studies, that they use that word for older students who are trying to complete an education. They have what's called a new resource program if you're 25 or older. So, I went to school with a handful of people, not too much. They were in their 40s and 50s and all. And the idea is that these people, myself being one of them, I was admitted when I was 24, but by the time I started attending, I'd already turned 25, so I barely skirted in there. They believe there's more experiential knowledge there, hands-on life training and all. One of the guys was a photographer, for example, and thought he could bring stuff to media studies or something. And one of the girls that referred me to Pitzer, she just had experience in life and could talk about the 60s. This place has kind of a liberal bias in their politics, at least from what they express verbally and on paper. But anyhow, so they let in the older students and all. And it's called New Resource. You know, I'm already halfway through this thing, and I might not get to the essence of, you know, what I wanted to talk about when I first, you know, got the camera and came out here. It's been overcast in California. It's even drizzles. It's midsummer right now. The World Cup is on later on today. The sun would be somewhere out there coming up if there weren't clouds. But so anyhow, I was set to graduate in the autumn of '98. There's a poopy right here. And we had family problems economically. Starting in the early '90s when my dad invested in a pizza store that never got off the ground, and eventually a house was foreclosed on. And since this Gunk series is in, you know, chunks of roughly 10 minutes, some of these issues are repeated just in case, you know, one of the like in my Homer Cocktail 076, one of my slab 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number four is more popular than the other ones, so I'm going to repeat some concepts in different ones. But the internet came about sometime in the 90s, at least into my life. There's a piece here on YouTube where you could study the history of the internet. It talks about the ARPANET and some other things and how the internet developed. And the roots are back to the 50s and 60s as far as computers communicating with one another. But as far as a mainstream person, America Online, I think, has been in business since the 80s. But as far as sending free software to people, that started somewhere in the 90s. And I was staying over here because our house is gone. When I first applied to Pitzer, we still had the house, and we got an eviction notice eventually, and it was finally taken over in March of 1995, and I began classes in the autumn of that year. And for a year I stayed at my dad's ex-wife's house. You know, my ex-stepmom. My start the comic element of my brother's sister's half boyfriend's ex-roommate. Remember that? But you know, that was a technical issue on that. Stayed there for the first year. I took chemistry and biology colleges, and, you know, adapted, got by, you know, passed my classes, studied hard as much as I could. Was working at the warehouse. Then they said they were going to sell the house, so I could have moved here. My dad was an electrician, and he's this thing has whatever's remaining of his he's retired now, but his equipment, you know, hammers, saws, that kind of stuff. So I could have stayed here, and this trailer wasn't here yet. It was mostly barren. The trees weren't here yet, you know, as far as shrubbery and cover, whatever you want to call that. The fence didn't come in until '97. It's pretty much open space. And he bought a trailer for himself. And his first pitch was for me to move into this raggedy old trailer that he had lived in the 70s when he was building the house further down on Oleander. Came Phantom Studios. But it wasn't, you know, that wasn't going to happen. That wasn't worth it. So what he did is he bought a trailer from the next door neighbor. The next door neighbor had recently passed away. Once again, this is Gunk series at the Homer Cocktail 4 site, coming on 10 minutes. So we'll continue. I'll continue with in the next piece. You guys have a good time, and we'll talk about what's going on in my life, and, you know, where I plan to be in 5, 10 years, whatever. All right. Have fun.